welcome back, my loves. So, B12. You've probably heard it touted as some kind of weight loss miracle, which it, totally is. But what B12 supplementation isn't is a replacement for appropriate diet, activity, and rest. You can megadose yourself with B12 while you're not exercising and eating shitty junk food, and you very well may lose weight if you were deficient in B12 to begin with. But if you continue with your same old shitty habits, you will gain all of that weight back, and then further B12 injections just won't work. However, if you're eating a great diet and your activity levels are good and you're getting enough rest and you're still just not losing weight, or it's going excruciatingly slow. By that I mean less than 1 pound a month. Supplementing with vitamin B12 might just be the thing that your body needs to kick itself into weight loss gear. That's what happened to me after I stopped starving myself and then gained 40 pounds and then plateaued at that weight for 6 months. I started slowly losing weight. I was doing everything right. But it was less than half a pound of weight loss per month. And while I was dedicated regardless, it just wasn't very rewarding work. So I did a round of high-dose B12 injections, and boom! I lost 10 pounds right away. Then I plateaued, then I lost another 5, and then it just slowly started creeping down until I got to the point I am at now. I now use a sublingual spray under the tongue of methylcobalamin, once or twice a week, because I'm not super worried about B12 because our bodies are so efficient at recycling and storing it that the likelihood that I'm going to get a deficiency anytime soon after having megadosed myself is really low. But let's work on understanding what vitamin B12 is, where it comes from, how we become deficient, and why this isn't just a problem for vegans. B12, aka cobalamin, named such because cobalt is a necessary ingredient, is a water-soluble vitamin that is necessary for neurological functioning, the formation of red blood cells, DNA replication, and metabolism of every single cell in your body. Cobalamin is stable to heat, although it is sensitive to heated alkaline or acid solutions. It is quite sensitive to light. It is destroyed by contact with oxygen, iron, or copper. And I have heard that there is a loss of activity from cooking, especially if it's in an alkaline or acid solution, which a lot of the times it is. And that loss from cooking comes to about 70% of activity, though this statement was not cited, so I'm not sure how credible that is. Now, a lot of people like to pretend B12 deficiency is only a problem for vegans, but at last count, 39% of Americans were deficient in B12, and while I sincerely wish that 39% of Americans were vegan, we only account for 1% of the population, so clearly there's another problem. And that problem is an absorption problem, caused by a digestive health problem and a sterile environment problem. Proper absorption of vitamin B12 is dependent on a number of factors. Protein-bound vitamin B12, which is the type that's usually found in food, must first be separated from that protein by gastric acids. Once separated from protein in the stomach, B12 precursors must then bind with something called R protein, which is manufactured by the salivary glands and gets swallowed along with your food. This R protein-bound vitamin B12 precursor must then bind to another protein called intrinsic factor, which is excreted by cells in your stomach. This B12 R protein intrinsic factor complex is then recognized by special receptor sites in the very end of your small intestine called the ileum, and it is then absorbed into the bloodstream. Interestingly, only about 1% of the oral dose of vitamin B12 is actually absorbed. And there does appear to be some kind of daily limit on how much B12 can be absorbed orally. Cobalamin that is absorbed is stored as adenosylcobalamin, and it is converted into methylcobalamin as needed. Your body can store anywhere between 2 and 5 milligrams of B12, and about 50% of that is stored in your liver. It's commonly believed that animal foods contain vitamin B12. But the truth of the matter is that the B12 precursor, hydroxycobalamin, is produced exclusively by bacteria, not animals, not plants, not fungus. There is some B12 stored in flesh foods. However, that B12 is heavily bound by protein. So it's not a good source of the B12 precursor that your body is able to utilize. The utilizable precursor is converted into cobalamin in the body after it's absorbed. Some plant foods can be a source of vitamin B12 analogs due to a symbiotic relationship between the plant or fungus and bacteria. And realistically, there is so much bacteria in your nose, between your teeth, stuck to the back of your throat. This, combined with certain plant foods and animal foods, really do provide a significant dose of B12 to us every day. However, those versions of B12 or B12 analogs are not necessarily the B12 analogs that your body is capable of absorbing and utilizing. And we know that the amount of B12 that you're capable of utilizing, even under the best circumstances, is highly limited. So in a normal, healthy human being, your body uses B12 every day. That used B12 is filtered by the liver, mixed with bile, and then excreted into your small intestine. As that B12 passes the last part of the small intestine, the ileum, where the B12 receptors are, a lot of that B12 is actually reabsorbed into the bloodstream, where it can be reused. However, normal, healthy human beings lose 0.1% of their B12 stores every day. So, in normal, healthy human beings, your B12 stores are relatively stable, but they do slowly peter out over time. Especially if you're having absorption issues. And since you're vegan, you're held to a higher health standard than anyone else in the world. If you feel tired for even a mere moment, it's because you're vegan. You're iron deficient, you're not getting enough B12, and you're anemic because of it, and you're gonna die from a protein deficiency. So we need to just go ahead and prevent as many health issues as possible. And a major potential health issue for a lot of people in the Western world, not just vegans, is B12 deficiency. Now, the reason you're potentially low in B12 probably is not because you're vegan. It's probably because your digestive tract has been somehow damaged and can't absorb B12 effectively anymore. And it is so freaking easy to damage our digestive tract in today's crazy ass world. Digestive tract damage can happen because of inflammation caused by poor diet, like eating too much overly processed junk food, too much meat, too much dairy, too many eggs, too much refined sugar, hydrogenated fats. Damage can be caused by gut dysbiosis or too many pathogenic bacteria in the gut, which are fed by all of the foods I just mentioned. Common medications harm the digestive tract hugely, like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. That's like ibuprofen. Everybody takes ibuprofen all the time, and it's crazy. Antibiotic use definitely damages the digestive tract. Damage can be caused by stress on the GI tract from past eating disorders like starvation or purging or laxative use, celiac disease, use of antacids. The list just goes on and on and on. And if you're deficient in B12, you'll be having symptoms like brain fog, depression, irritability, slow reflexes, a swollen tongue, decreased taste, low red blood cell count, poor fertility, slow growth, slow metabolism, irritability, the inability to lose weight. Pretty much everything goes wrong, no? And some people even go on to develop pernicious anemia, which is technically a disease in which there's not enough intrinsic factor to bind to the B12, but it's often used as a blanket term to refer to the low red blood cell count caused by low B12. So pernicious anemia is most commonly caused by an autoimmune disorder that attacks the cells in your stomach that produce intrinsic factor. This type of anemia is also really common in people who have had gastric bypass surgery. People with pernicious anemia develop symptoms of low B12, and then the appropriate tests are performed and they are diagnosed. And luckily, pernicious anemia is very effectively treated with B12 supplementation that circumvents the digestive tract. which happens to be the best way for everyone to supplement B12. Since absorption of B12 is the big problem, supplements in a way that circumvents the digestive tract, and thus sidesteps any potential absorption issues. On a whole food, vegan diet, your most reliable choices are injections and sublingual supplements. Most B12 comes in like super ridiculous high doses, but since it's a water-soluble vitamin, it doesn't seem to cause any trouble and you just pee the rest out. However, your B12 needs are incredibly low, so unless you're currently confirmed as a person who is deficient in B12, you do not need to take mega doses, or even a daily dose. Like, I intend to take my B12 supplement, like, maybe twice a week, but I always forget, so it's more like 2 or 3 times a month, and that's not gonna cause me any problem, because B12 is, in healthy humans, stable. And as long as you give it a little bump every now and then, your levels aren't going to get dangerously low. So there are a few different forms of B12 that can be supplemented. Cyanocobalamin is a really popular form of B12. When it's metabolized, it does result in a very small amount of cyanide being produced. However, even when it's in super high doses, the likelihood that you're going to experience a cyanide toxicity from taking cyanocobalamin is like virtually impossible. So it's really not something that you need to be super worried about. However, there are other options, and just because I like to, feel special, I use methylcobalamin. 3 years ago, I did a super high dose of injectable methylcobalamin, and I did feel a marked and immediate difference in my energy levels, and like I said earlier, I very quickly started losing weight. However, there hasn't really been sufficient research done to determine what potential negative side effects could happen from these huge injectable B12 megadoses. It could be fine. It could be totally fine long term. Or you could develop like an allergy, or there could be some like unforeseen major problem that we don't know about. It just hasn't been researched. We don't know. Megadoses like this for the general population that people can just get a hold of by themselves is a pretty new thing. Certainly, if you're very low in B12 and experiencing those symptoms, inject away. Remedy that as quickly as you can. But if your B12 levels are healthy, you just don't need those megadoses, and honestly, it's like better safe than sorry. So because I hate needles, and I definitely live my life by the mantra of better safe than sorry, I now use sublingual methylcobalamin spray like when I remember. And lastly, I do want to address the possibility of an allergic reaction because I was specifically asked about this and I do want it addressed. It is definitely a legitimate concern. Some people do report allergic reactions after taking B12. It can be anything from a skin rash to actual anaphylaxis. It's really rare, but it happens. Now, what happens more often than not is that it's not a true B12 allergy, it's actually an allergy to another additive of the supplement or injection, like mannitol or niacin. So if you think you have this problem with a potential B12 reaction, it's really important to try, under the supervision of a doctor, the most pure version of B12 you can find with as few additives as possible. There have been reports of things like horrible acne breakouts or the development or worsening of rosacea happening after a dose of B12, be that by injection or orally. But unfortunately, there is not a lot of information about what we should do about that, or even if things like B12 fortified foods are safe for these people. There does appear to be a really hesitant conclusion, like I won't even call it a conclusion, maybe a suspicion that cyanocobalamin is most often the culprit in allergic reactions. However, people have shown allergies to all versions of B12, so I'm sorry, there's just not a lot of solid info out there available. If you do have a B12 allergy, when you're supervised by a doctor or other medical professional that can take care of you in the event of a severe allergic reaction, you can try other forms of cobalamin, like methyl, cyano, hydroxy, and see if one of those versions doesn't cause you trouble. You can also try it with skin prick tests, as some people aren't allergic to all forms. There are also a few and very limited case studies about people who had pernicious anemia and a B12 allergy, of them being able to be successfully sensitized to cyanocobalamin. So there is some hope. Other than that, there's just not a lot of information available, so I can't give any definitives. Alright, you guys, if you have any more questions after all of that, I sincerely applaud you for thinking so deeply. You can leave those questions below and I'll do my best. Whew. Man, I think I need to go take a nap after that. My little lady brain hurts. That subscribe button is calling you. If you've learned something from this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're one of Levi's ex-girlfriends, give it a thumbs down, like you always do. I know you guys are watching, I don't know why. And you know, I love your comments. I love them. So until next time, make better B12 choices for yourself and take really, really, really good care. We have this lovely t-shirt provided by Go Vegan Revolution. It's not a plug because they don't know who I am.